women's health through technology. So if we can welcome Vicky, Jess and Jan to the stage, we're delighted to hear from you. Thank you.
It's a good job my kids aren't here because they'd have a hilarious laugh at me trying to get on a tall stool. So, thanks everyone, thanks Charlotte. We're here today to talk about Femtech and use of technology to improve women's health. Just to introduce myself, so I'm Vicky Protano. I also work at Mills and Reeve with Charlotte. I'm based here in Manchester at our Circle Square office. I'm a corporate partner, so advise businesses and companies in relation to their corporate strategies, acquisitions and disposals, investments, and general day-to-day corporate issues. And for me, I work quite a lot with businesses in the life sciences and healthcare sector, so health tech and femtech sit bang on in the middle of there. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Jan Rogers of Agile Life Sciences, which is based out of Daresbury, and Jess Jackson of Manchester venture capital firm Praetura. I'm going to let Jan and Jess introduce themselves shortly, but firstly, I just really want to talk about what is Femtech. So Femtech, as many people will know, is a term that's used to refer to technology, devices, diagnostics tools, products, services, wearables, and software that's used to address female health issues. And when I was looking, Charlotte and I are looking at Femtech in particular as a kind of a source of advisory work at the moment. And when we've looked at what Femtech, why Femtech is so important, what's become apparent to us is and to anyone in the sector will know this, that for decades, women's health has just not been properly served for a number of reasons. That's because that women haven't been at the centre of the development of medicines and the software itself. But more importantly, coming back to Charlotte's point, women have been vastly underrepresented in clinical trials, and Jan's got some interesting stats, as has Jess, as to why that is, and it's a really important issue, because how can we talk about reproductive health, maternity health, fertility health, menopausal health if actually the women that need to be studied and talked to haven't been consulted on those issues. So Femtech is very much about empowering women to use technology to adopt strategies for assisting with their own health, and obviously Dr. Gareth Thomas earlier mentioned that that's one of the key strategies of the Greater Manchester Health Innovation Network partnerships, and so something that's, I think, quite important for us to talk about today. There's also been huge media focus on Femtech, with Davina McCall obviously taking a big role around emphasising her menopausal struggles. And women in the workplace, you know, we are now professional women who will go through all kinds of cycles of health issues, and our workplaces need to be aware of that and alive to the issues that we're facing. And finally, there is an economic value to Femtech as well. There was an article that was exemplified in Forbes recently that by 2030, Femtech has the global potential economic value of over 103 billion. So for investors and businesses alike, it really is something that we should be looking at focusing on. So just as a nod to the people in the audience who are not identifying as females, this session is not to exclude you either, because you will all have women in your life, whether it's colleagues, mums, daughters, sisters. So yeah, this is as much for you as it is for us. And on that note, I'm going to turn to Jan, please, to introduce yourself.
Thank you very much. So I'm Jan Rogers. I'm the CEO and co-founder at Agile Life Sciences. And our passion for the last 2 years has really been about developing a menopause test. About 2 years ago, when we were sort of coming out of COVID, looking at new opportunities and where we could take the business. For me, menopause was a massive unmet need, combined with our skill sets of being very passionate about health and well-being, and also about being a great life sciences team. So we kind of married the three together, and a good friend of mine is a menopause specialist, and we did genuinely feel that a lot of my friends were going sort of through menopause. A number of people were considering leaving their jobs because not quite knowing what was wrong with them, not too sure if they should go and see a GP, didn't want to take up a GP's time, looking at what was available, absolutely nothing available. When they do go to see GPs, sometimes it can take 6 visits. It's best guess, and the best guess depends on how well that GP knows about menopause. And we just felt that it was really a massive untapped area. But we were also acutely aware that any testing that was available at the moment, which was primarily around hormone testing, was incredibly poor. Didn't have any correlations, there was no scientific data, there wasn't any good evidence to correlate that to menopause stage. So we are very passionate about the gut microbiome, and that then led to the vaginal microbiome. From our perspective, from a commercial point of view in developing products, the vaginal microbiome is a far simpler biome than the gut biome, and does follow a specific route from premenopause through to postmenopause. So we spent the last 2 years really researching this area. We've run a complete real-world study. We didn't want to exclude anybody from that study, so our study was anybody over the age of 38 and assigned female at birth. So that included people on hormones, whether that was contraceptive hormones or HRT. Again, because we wanted to make sure that the data at the end of the day was applicable to everybody. We successfully ran that. We had a massive sign-up and great interest in this. And a lot of people from postmenopausal women, and just to say, actually, we are really excited that there's some research in this space, and we just want to be part of the project. So signed up 1,600 people in very, very short period of time. I think 1 Facebook ad, and that was it. We then obviously ran the study, ran the data. We used a technique called next generation sequencing. We generated just a huge amount of information. So we got a partnership with IBM to use artificial intelligence and machine learning. From that, we've been able to see shifts in vaginal microbiome that correlate to menopause phase. So that's a massive step for us. So we are very keen. We're now very excited. We've got a diagnostic test. We wanted it to be a diagnostic test. We wanted it to get regulatory approval because we wanted it to differentiate it from a hormone test. Some of the issues around, I mean, we're all for Davina McCall, but there's a couple of things. One is everybody assumes that menopause has been solved because Davina McCall's been on TV and said, hey, take HRT and that's that. And then the other aspect of it is, I think, sorry, yeah, I've lost my thought. Yeah, so really we were all about designing the, conducting that study, making sure, I think when people talk about a test, their immediate reaction is FSH, hormone test, no good, no point. And so we start to have to differentiate between what we've done, it's evidence-based, it's got good scientific evidence behind it, against a hormone test. So that's one of the challenges we have. But yeah, so really that's where we are. We've completed that study. Our goal now is to raise some money and bring that product to market. And then look at how that can be extended into monitoring, so HRT monitoring. Have you on the right HRT? Have you got the right vaginal microbiome? Have you got the estrogen receptors that will, the HRT is good for you? We know 50% of women don't respond to HRT, so that's kind of where we are.
Okay, we'll definitely pick up on that in the next question, I think. So, Jess, do you just want to have a introduce? I mean, I'm sure many people in the audience will already know Jess because she's here before.
So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jess Jackson. I'm one of the investment managers at Praetura Ventures. You probably know of us as a tech investor through our EIS funds, but last year we won the mandate for GMC2, or the Greater Manchester and Cheshire Life Sciences Fund 2. You'll understand why I say GMC2 a lot more. We won the remit. It's a joint venture between Bruntwood SciTech, GMCA, and the Warrington and East Cheshire Local Enterprise Partnership to invest in regional SMEs that are within the life sciences space. So we mean, biotech, medtech, digital health, therapeutics and diagnostics. So in my job, I get to chat to people like Jan and hear about all the exciting things she's working on. And then James from Decently, they're in our portfolio, one of our most recent portfolio businesses. And I think it's just important to say, we don't have a specialism in Femtech, but it's obviously a huge part falling under that umbrella. And I think it was also important, when I was thinking about preparing for this panel, to sort of say, this isn't actually just about fertility and menopause. Our health matters so much more than that. Women's health, if we sort of broaden that out a little bit wider, yes, of course, that includes fertility and menopause, but it's also, you know, common diseases that actually impact us at a higher prevalence, or actually our response to that disease and manifestations of that disease are distinct to us. And because of those kind of disparities in data, you know, there's not actually as good an understanding. So the best example I can give is in stroke, for example. So, you know, the FAST, you know, face, arms, speech, you know, all of that kind of stuff. Like, we don't actually have a stroke like that. So a lot of women don't even recognise they're having a stroke. And actually that's prevalent in medical professionals too, which is horrifying. But there we go. So we have looked at a broad range of Femtech businesses that, you know, and the problem that arises for us is how do we actually validate these? And, you know, I have to wear my VC hat, but I'm also a raging feminist inside. So I'm sort of like shaking my fists at the world whilst also having to tell a business, sorry, I can't really assess this or validate this because there's just not that foundational research to say, actually, this is going to be the new way of doing it, or I can actually see this market. So it's a huge challenge. One of the things I just wanted to mention was also, you know, that representation in VC is hugely important when we're assessing Femtech businesses. You know, and I always like to give examples too, because I think it just adds a lot of colour, but we were assessing a business called Brarista, which was a digital bra fit tool. And sat down in the room, sort of started talking about it, and honestly, like, the looks on some of our male colleagues' faces was hilarious. It's like, is this a problem? And we're like, yes. And, you know, sometimes we have to make a point of saying vagina as often as possible with a straighter face, because that is its anatomical name, and we can all just, like, grow up a little bit. But, you know, generally speaking, you know, people can be weirdly squeamish about stuff, and, you know, we are half of the population, and our health concerns are massive markets, so we kind of need to get over that a little bit.
No,
so
definitely.
I'll stop there.
Yeah, no. I'm the only one who's not said vagina, so there you go. I've said it now too.
Cross that one off your bingo cards, everybody.
I did have a dare from one of my friends to say, can you say another one alternative, but I'm not going to. So, joking aside though, coming back to what differences technology can make to improving women's health, and obviously, Jan, you've kind of talked to the fact that you've got this diagnostics tool and it can help women identify where they are on the menopausal journey. So we've got, you know, examples of the fact that it can make differences, but I'm kind of straying into now engagement as well as the differences it can make. How do we get users engaged in using the technology and understanding what the technology is and does for them, and how do we get the sector engaged? And again, just picking up on what Jess said there, I think examples are really important here. So I was talking to the same friend who tried to get me to say foo-foo. There you go, Jeanette, I've said it for you. She went to the doctor feeling really unwell, and she was adamant, she was in her late 30s, she was adamant she was going through menopause. The GP turned around to her and said, I'm really sorry, I can give you a blood test, but I can't give you any treatment. You need to go, literal words, you need to go to Holland & Barrett and try every single vitamin on the shelf. Everyone knows how big a vitamin bottle is. There's one vitamin in. Can you imagine how long that took her? She was on vitamins for years, kept going back to the GP, and it took her several years to get diagnosed with being in the perimenopausal stage and getting HRT. That's just not acceptable, is it? I mean, a woman could have gone through any kind of issue at that point. So it's not just about user engagement from my perspective from that story. It's also about sector engagement and the healthcare professionals' engagement as well.
Indeed, yeah. And I think, you know, we now know, again, menopause used to be average age is 51, but it's anywhere between sort of 38 and 56 is kind of where it is. Can last anywhere between 7 and 10 years. So, you know, you're actually in perimenopause for quite a long time. I think engagement, interestingly, women going through menopause are highly engaged with new technology and wanting to know what's happening to them. There are a number of apps out there, and again, it's something why it's very important that everything is scientifically backed. Put a Meno in front of anything, and you know, numbers go through the roof on sales. It's mad, really. So I think it's about communication, making sure we communicate good scientific data. Nobody really wants to know how we've got to, where we got to, how we've diagnosed somebody's perimenopause. Nobody is at all interested in what their bacteria is. You know, so I think it's about translating that effectively so that it becomes a very clear message. And I think, yeah, so for me, it's that, as I say, I mean, the sign up for our study just blew my mind. I think it still blows my mind. We are a tiny SME. We've got the biggest database in the world correlating vaginal microbiomes to menopause. It's like, how did that happen? You know, it just goes to show lack of research. But it also goes to show how women are incredibly engaged at understanding their own health and trying to improve it and, you know, sort of just making it better for them, being empowered to have choices. That's kind of where we're coming from.
And then if you've got the sector engagement and you've got the healthcare professionals engagement, you'll hopefully inevitably have commercialisation, and that's from an investor perspective is going to be key to when you're assessing businesses coming to you, Jess.
Yeah, no, exactly. And just like some really interesting points in what you've just said there, which can sort of be good and for real. So like one of the things that I've noticed as well, you know, I'm going through a fertility journey. I've been trying for 2 years. We're going through IVF now, and sort of the conversations that healthcare professionals have, or just people have, you know, we're an incredibly motivated cohort for very clear reasons, but we've got a lot of buying power. But I think a lot of people take advantage of that. So it's like, take this vitamin, it might work. There's no scientific basis to say that it does, but it just doesn't do you any harm. And I think, you know, making all the bottles pink, you know, it's going to sell, but actually there's no basis necessarily that that's going to help. So, you know, I think it is really important to have that validation. I think, you know, coming back to assessing it as a VC, I think it's a Kyle Sandberg quote, you know, the vitamin kind of versus the painkillers kind of approach. I know you wanted me to touch on that. But, you know, there are a lot of kind of apps out there and things like, oh yeah, track this, or like eat a head of broccoli on the day of the full moon or whatever, which I'm sure is helpful. But I think from an investor point of view, you're kind of like, okay, but so what? Mm-hmm. So everything that someone is telling you, we can go off and measure this. Cool, nice technology, but so what? Like, how is that going to get into the hands of patients? But not only that, how is it actually going to change the outcomes for them? And then even beyond that, you know, you can still have all of those pieces in place, but who's going to pay for this? Yeah. And that's often the hardest question to answer. So, and unfortunately, for all of the wrong reasons, that it's had a lot in Femtech, because it's, you know, this is great, it's a really underserved population, but then how are we going to have the dialogue to make this a commercial decision and get someone to pay for this, whether it's a screening program, you know, for menopause, or, you know, a clinically validated app, whatever it is. That journey is just harder.
Yeah.
You know, women only make up 30% of early stage clinical trials because pharmaceutical, you know, and from an ethics perspective, and, you know, it's kind of understandable, but there is an overbearing kind of, oh my God, these people are fertile, we need to exclude them from our trials. But you made an excellent point when we were in the back room, so I'll ask you to sort of repeat it so I don't steal your thunder, but just about how, you know, we're all on hormones, so you can't exclude us.
Absolutely, yeah, no, I say fundamentally, women can be on hormones from quite a young age to a very old age, so excluding them from a clinical trial is just, it's just mad really, because otherwise you just exclude so many people out of your study, and you design a drug that doesn't work on a significant proportion of the population.
Yeah, so just to echo the point, which I found fascinating, women can be excluded from clinical trials just from purely being on any kind of pill that we often get asked to take. You know, the pill for contraception, or menopause, treating our periods, or, you know, being on some kind of menopausal hormone therapy. So we can't actually take part in the trials, but we need to take part in the trials to be able to have people understanding what's wrong, and it just seems counterproductive on every level. I'm conscious because we are already running out of time, and we are the pre-lunch session. So there's one thing I wanted to mention just about you mentioned then, Jess, about affordability. So this is across the board for particularly fertility treatments and menopausal treatments. So affordability is going to be a huge issue. I mean, you'll know how difficult it is to get IVF treatments, and then you might have to look at private alternatives. Jan, your diagnostics test at the moment is straight to consumer or via some kind of independent healthcare sector or private body. we're talking about kind of being diverse and inclusive, but if it's affordability issues, any woman might have that. But then secondly, we've got people in marginalised communities who may not even be able to think about this, let alone afford it or access it. I mean, that's going to be a huge barrier for women being able to use technology to help their own health, surely.
Definitely, yeah, and I think, in the short terms, again, we're an SME, so the goal is to get investment, and the investment needs commercialisation. And so, as much as we'd love to go an NHS route, it's just such a big challenge because it's all about health economics. So it's taking us down the private route to generate that data sort of outside the NHS and almost get the pull back in. I mean, we can see the massive benefits of that, which is, at the moment, it's treat the symptoms, but there are over 30 symptoms of menopause. So you can treat somebody for 30 different things before you even consider menopause. And so the cost to the NHS is quite significant. The cost to the UK economy, I mean, just going back to that point, we know 1 in 10 women leave their jobs from senior positions. Been estimated at £10 billion per annum. So again, it's a huge amount of money that can be saved, but gathering that data is, just going the NICE guideline route, the NHS route, is just, it's tough for an SME.
I just wanted to add to that because I think it's really pertinent, again, just coming back to the VC perspective, but, VCs invest as a sprint and not a marathon. We're looking for returns over 5 years. And, when you're looking at kind of proving out that data point, this is probably like a 7-10 year, observational window of going, interventions here and what was the kind of long-term impact of that. And that's not where VC sits, and it doesn't see that as its role. So, I know one of your questions was going to be like, how can we sort of fundamentally change these things? It has to be much more public-led, government-led investment to sort of drive research in those early stages. I mean, like, again, another example that, one of my colleagues was looking at was a menstrual biobank. Like, the fact that one of these doesn't exist is actually quite surprising, and it sounds so interesting, but then you think, well, where's the commercial model for that? Like, why on earth does this not exist at an NHS kind of funded level to really kind of understand, broadly 50% of the population? But there's just not a commercial model that sits behind that. Great idea. How do we commercialise?
And just picking up on that point, so my daughters, one's 11, one's 15, so both of them have got their own issues with their own health. They want to control their own period plans. They've got apps, and they're very aware of what they need to do for their own health and what they want to have happen. But you look back at the fact that we're still in these issues where there's clinical trials that are not serving, whether it's menstrual biobanks or like Charlotte alluded to on looking at kind of where you are in your cycle. These are all huge issues that our daughters, our children will want to change, and they are going to be much more actively involved in their own health, and hopefully we can all kind of identify with that and look to help. I don't know if we've got time for any Q&A. Yeah, a couple of minutes if anyone wants to raise any questions. We had loads more to talk about. We did spend God knows how long talking about it on our briefing call, so.
Everyone's hungry.
Yeah.
I know, yeah, everyone's hungry.
I'll use the couple of minutes if that's okay, because I've got some points that
Yeah.
I wanted to raise, so
Yeah.
I'll do it, but I'll do it as part of the wrap-up.
But thank you to everyone as well. Anyway.
I know, please stay seated in case you wanted to contribute. But I just, so some things that I picked up on, I really liked your point that women's health, Femtech, is not just about fertility and menopause, although, of course, those two things are very, very important. Thank you for telling the story about stroke. You can, the same in relation to a heart attack. So that real issues. I saw somebody talk the other day talk about osteoporosis, again, affecting women disproportionately. I did want to mention a couple of conversations I've had recently with male Femtech innovators. So fantastic businesses. One's from a startup background, really successful business. So this is a passion project. The other is a clinician, a breast surgeon actually. Both have Femtech startups and have independently told me very, very similar stories about how difficult they have found it to work in the femtech sector as a man. So it's really interesting that you had that conversation. I think that taboo point is prevalent in this area, and I think I liked your point as we all just need to kind of grow up and get over it and say vagina and be okay with it. And there we go, I said it. I also, and then finally just on the access point, so I totally agree. I think a lot of the products and innovations are probably going to be better suited to be delivered and scaled at an NHS scale, or at least on a publicly funded basis. Gareth. And I think that needs to link in with the Women's Health Strategy and Women's Health Hubs. And if you haven't listened to it, I encourage you to go and listen to Professor Dame Leslie Regan's Desert Island Discs. It was on the podcast this week. So she's the ambassador for women's health. Fascinating story, but she really makes the point around this. And I think that we are at a stage now where there is a women's health strategy. All integrated care systems are being challenged to develop women's health hubs, which will increase access through the NHS to women's health care. But they're all doing it at very different rates. They've all got other things going on as well. And so, I mean, I'm particularly interested in engaging with those integrated care systems and what they're doing around that. So if anyone knows, come and tell me. But I think it's really early stages and there's not an awful lot really going on.
And just a very quick addition to that point, the engagement that we get at government and healthcare professional level will help those early stage businesses and the innovators, because that will then help VCs to be able to make decisions based on commercial viability and sales. And, you know, we still do have an overwhelmingly white male population of in the investment community. So we need to make it more attractive to them and not just a women's issue.
Thank you very much. Now you can eat.
Yeah.